Some kids see shapes in clouds. 7-year-old Hannah Miller sees stories in numbers. While most second graders struggle with basic math, Hannah spots patterns that even computers miss. You see, Hannah's father is a detective, and his cold case files are filled with numbers, dates, times, and identification numbers that went nowhere. Until now. One ordinary afternoon at the police station, Hannah glances at a 15-year-old case file on her father's desk. What she notices in those dusty pages isn't just another number, it's a pattern so obvious that it had been hiding in plain sight for over a decade. A pattern that would lead to one of the most shocking discoveries in the department's history. Her father thought she was just playing with numbers like she always did. He couldn't have been more wrong. Every parent thinks their child is special, but sometimes, a child comes along who truly defies explanation. Hannah Miller was one of those children. While most second graders at Pine Grove Elementary were learning to count by tens, Hannah was already solving complex multiplication problems in her head. But this isn't just another story about a child genius. This is a story about how an innocent observation would unravel a criminal empire that had stumped the FBI for over a decade. Detective David Miller had always known his daughter was different. He remembered the day Hannah, at just 4 years old, stopped in front of their new house and announced, "Daddy, 1,458 is special. It's a perfect square times 2. He'd laughed it off until his wife, a literature teacher, insisted he check the math. Hannah was right. By 5, she was reciting prime numbers for fun. By 6, she could solve complex math problems faster than most adults could type them into a calculator. But what made Hannah truly unique wasn't just her ability with numbers, it was the way she saw them as old friends, each with its own personality and story to tell. "Numbers are like people, Daddy," she would say, twirling her brown pigtails while sitting at his desk after school. "They all have secrets. You just have to listen carefully." Detective Miller would smile and ruffle her hair, not realizing that those innocent words would soon take on a whole new meaning. It started on a Tuesday afternoon in October. Hannah was at her usual spot at her father's desk, surrounded by her homework and his case files. Detective Miller was reviewing cold cases. The ones that kept him up at night, the ones that seemed impossible to solve. That's when Hannah's small voice broke through his concentration. "Daddy, these numbers add up to 42. He barely looked up from his work. "That's nice, sweetie." Her eyes had caught something else. Another document, another set of numbers, then another, and another. "These do too, Daddy. And these, they all add up to 42. Something in her voice made Detective Miller pause. Was it possible? Could his 7-year-old daughter have noticed something that dozens of trained investigators had missed? The case she was looking at was 15 years old, one of the biggest investment scams in state history. Richard Cooper, a charismatic financial advisor, had disappeared after running a massive Ponzi scheme that had devastated hundreds of families. He'd stolen their life savings, their retirement funds, their children's college money, and then vanished without a trace. Detective Miller decided to humor his daughter. He let her look through more files related to the case, social security numbers, bank accounts, dates, anything with numbers. Hannah worked diligently, her small fingers tracing across the pages, her lips moving silently as she added. For a week, she spent her after-school hours at his desk, surrounded by papers covered in her colorful calculations. Other detectives would walk by, smiling at the sight of the little girl playing detective with her father, but Hannah wasn't playing. 1 week later, she spread out her work on her father's desk. "Look, Daddy, I found more! Every time someone thinks they saw the bad man, the numbers add up to 42. Detective Miller felt a chill run down his spine as he looked at his daughter's work. Could she be on something there? Is a 7-year-old genius about to solve a 15-year-old case? He ran the numbers through the database, this time looking specifically for social security numbers where the digits added up to 42. What he found made his hands shake. A pattern emerged, a string of identities across multiple states, all connected by this simple mathematical constant. The trail led them to a quiet suburban high school 2 hours away, where a beloved math teacher named James Parker had been teaching for the past 3 years. A man known for his brilliant mind and his ability to make numbers dance. A man who had recently started offering investment advice to his students' parents. As Detective Miller dug deeper, the pieces started falling into place. James Parker's background looked perfect, almost too perfect. His credentials were immaculate, his references glowing. But there was something about the way everything aligned that made Detective Miller uneasy. Then came the breakthrough. A former student's parent had invested $50,000 in one of Parker's exclusive investment opportunities. The paperwork looked legitimate. The returns promised were impressive but not outrageous. Everything seemed above board. Except for one thing, the bank account number on the investment documents. When you added up its digits, they summed to 42. The investigation revealed a calculated predator. During parent-teacher conferences, Parker would casually mention his background in finance. He'd listen sympathetically as parents shared their worries about college tuition or retirement savings. Then, a few weeks later, he'd approach them with an exclusive investment opportunity, one that seemed too good to pass up. His pitch was always perfectly tailored to his victims. For single mothers, he emphasized long-term security. For families with medical debt, he promised quick returns. For parents worried about college funds, he offered special educational investment packages. Each proposal was meticulously crafted to prey on their specific fears and hopes. He had already collected over $2 million in investments. The money was flowing into offshore accounts, ready to disappear just like he had done so many times before. The number 42 wasn't random. It was his way of remembering all his social security numbers. It was what tied all his lies together, what allowed him to always know where he stood. But the real shock came when they ran facial recognition software on Parker's driver's license photo aged backward 15 years. James Parker was Richard Cooper. When the FBI arrested James Parker in the middle of his calculus class, they found evidence linking him to 5 different investment scams across 3 states. In each case, he had used social security numbers and bank accounts where the digits added up to 42. In each case, he had targeted those who could least afford to lose their savings. Thanks to Hannah's discovery, investigators were able to freeze accounts and recover millions in hidden assets. While not all of Cooper's victims could be made whole, her innocent observation prevented countless more families from falling victim to his schemes. Today, Hannah still sits at her father's desk after school, doing her homework surrounded by case files. But now, when she says numbers have stories to tell, her father listens a little more carefully. Because sometimes the most complicated puzzles have the simplest solutions. Sometimes the most sophisticated criminals can be caught by the most innocent observations. And sometimes it takes a child's pure way of seeing the world to spot what everyone else has missed. As for Hannah, she just sees it as another story her number friends helped her tell. Music, gentle fade out.